remote access VPNs, and a lot of surrounding important technologies that make them possible. Let's begin. A long, long time ago, in a network far away, we used to use dial-up. And dial-up was pretty amazing in its day. So we had the user like Bob, and we had, for example, the public switch telephone network, and then we had the corporate office. So this is Bob at his home, and here's the corporate headquarters. And Bob, using his dial-up, would go ahead and connect over the public switch telephone network to a remote access server that would allow him access into the network. And the speed of that communication would depend on, which decade we caught Bob doing that dial-up networking in. But it wasn't really fast. Now, we don't have a whole bunch of dial-up anymore, and that's because most users like Bob are now connected to the internet. So now if Bob wants to get access to his corporate resources, because Bob has a high-speed connection to the internet like DSL or cable modem, and because the corporation has a fairly high-speed pipe into the internet, we can leverage the internet as a backbone to transport our traffic between Bob and the corporate headquarters, and to keep it safe, of course, we'll use some type of virtual private network with encryption services for confidentiality and hashing algorithms for data integrity. Now we have a few options regarding what the device is at the headquarters site that can act as a termination point for the VPN tunnels. In the old days, we had a VPN concentrator, and you know what? It was fabulous. And as that got phased out, they moved over most of that functionality over to the ASA. So it's very likely that our ASA may be the device doing termination of our IPsec and SSL VPNs. It's also possible to use iOS, although it's not highly favored because of the CPU required. But with the right license, a lot of those features can still be done with the iOS router as well, terminating the VPN connections. From the client perspective, we have the client-less option, which means that there's no client required on Bob's computer. It also implies that Bob doesn't need to have administrative rights on his computer because he has nothing to install. He's going to use the SSL that was built into his browser, and Bob could create an SSL-based VPN. Both web VPN and clientless both mean the same thing. Effectively, Bob does not have any type of special VPN software that's installed and that he's running on his computer for him to use the VPN connection. So our clientless option is always going to be SSL/TLS. And if we want to use a client on Bob's computer that he can connect and actually feel like he lives on the corporate network, in a Cisco environment, we're going to be using the AnyConnect client. Now the AnyConnect, by default, is going to be using SSL/TLS as its mechanism for that communication. It also leverages something called DTLS for the data plane between Bob and the corporate headquarters that can help the efficiency of that VPN tunnel by using some UDP for the transport of that traffic as opposed to using TCP for all of the traffic. The AnyConnect client also has the option of using IKE v2 if we want to use IPsec. However, IKE v2 is not the default attitude on the AnyConnect client. If we want Bob or other users to use IKE v2, we need to configure a specific profile on the ASA, which is going to be pushed down to Bob's client the next time he connects, so that for future connections, it can go ahead and use IPsec and specifically IKE v2 as its preferred and primary protocol. Now regarding the server, the head-end device that's terminating the VPN tunnels for all of our remote access clients, the focus in the current CCNP security course from Cisco is all about using the ASA as that head-end device. And check this out, it was also the focal point for the previous version of the CCNP security, again using that ASA as the head-end VPN device. I wanted to share with you a document that has some great resources for iOS-based VPNs as far as their design, implementation, and troubleshooting. Because it'll be a huge value to you if you're currently working with or using an iOS router as the head-end device to support remote access VPN clients. So here's the document. It's called the SSL VPN Configuration Guide, Cisco iOS Release 15M and T. And as an example of how useful this document is, if we take a look at the bookmarks over here and open up the restrictions for SSL VPNs, it can help us quickly identify, for example, if we're trying to implement some feature or function on the iOS router for SSL VPNs, but it's not supported. That can save us a whole bunch of time by knowing that up front without trying to configure something and then having it not work correctly. And if we've been asked by management, for example, to customize the iOS SSL VPN server so that on the portal page, it's got our own logo, or we want to change the title or the colors, it'll walk us through how to do a lot of that customization on the iOS router that's acting as the VPN head-end server. So if you and I were asked to customize this on an iOS router, we could get this document and just do a search of this document for portal page, or if we knew that it was on page 19, We can just go directly to it to learn about what we can customize so that when users connect via web VPN with clientless SSL, the portal that they're going to see is going to be based on what we set up in our customization and the templates we used in customizing the portal page. One of the other cool things I like about reading the docs from Cisco is that oftentimes we'll run across something that I didn't even know existed. For example, with Netegrity cookie-based single sign-on support, we can configure a single sign-on server that sets a SiteMinder cookie in the browser of the customer when they log on for the first time. And then as that customer goes to resources that are being protected inside of a SiteMinder realm or domain, the SiteMinder agent can go ahead and verify and validate that cookie before those resources are allowed to be accessed. And then we have a hyperlink right here that takes us to page 88 regarding configuring that feature. So it has the summary steps of what's involved as well as the details for each of the commands. It also has important notes regarding things that you have to do to make it work. For example, a Cisco plugin must be first installed on the Netegrity server in order to support the single sign-on feature leveraging the cookies. It's also great to know where things are put. For example, let's say we were asked by our management to disable user-level bookmarking on the web VPN client when they connect to the iOS head-end VPN device. Well, in the doc it says, hey, guess what? There's no way to turn it off, so it's on by default. So it'd be important to know that as opposed to trying to find out a way to turn it off. Now, because user-level bookmarking is enabled, where are those bookmarks stored? Well, we can specify it with the user-profile location command. But if we don't specify the location, the default location is on flash in a folder called Web VPN. And that's also really helpful to know in the event we ever have to go in and remove a user-level bookmark that's currently been stored. So there's tons of configuration examples with the iOS router acting as that VPN server. And there are some great examples of how we might use debug to help troubleshoot a particular problem. For example, we all know how debug starts. Debug, but for Web VPN, which is referring to the clientless VPN, the brackets following are all options, meaning we could just do debug web VPN and press enter, or we could do a debug web VPN AAA if we're trying to troubleshoot some authentication or authorization issue between the router and a AAA server. And in fact, we could add one on here. We could even do a debug of AAA authentication and debug AAA authorization. And if we're using Radius, we could do our debugs on Radius as well. Perhaps we have a problem where Radius isn't configured correctly, and as a result, we can't even reach the AAA server. And so on the iOS router, we'd want to use a test space AAA, and that way we can actually put in a username and a password in the server we want to test against. And right from the command line interface, from the router, we could verify we have good connectivity from the router up to that AAA server. So again, I want to suggest this document as one you basically download, have available for you in the event you're ever working with or supporting an iOS router acting as a VPN head-end device. In our journey together through the world of VPN, I have in this course referred you to 2 or 3 videos from our existing CCNP Security VPN 2.0 course, specifically on SSL technology and the public key infrastructure, as well as the implementing and troubleshooting site-to-site VPNs. In regards to remote access with the AnyConnect client, the clientless options, using AAA for authentication, high availability, and troubleshooting, the content regarding those topics are in the existing CCNP Security VPN 2.0 course, and have no fear, I have another specific list for you that I'd like you to go through. Now I have that list in 2 places. Number 1, it's right here. This is the list of videos. I also have it as a document in the Nugget Lab files for this course. So regarding this list of videos from the CCNP Security VPN 2.0 course, I would get this list from the Nugget Lab files and make sure that you go through each one of those videos on the list. And the reason that these videos are so important is because AnyConnect and clientless SSL VPNs are becoming the primary method for secure, encrypted, remote access sessions going over the internet and other untrusted networks today. Now, if we combine the assigned list of videos from the CCNP Security VPN 2.0 course, it's pretty much most of the course. In fact, it might be easier if we just brought up the list and talked about which ones you don't need to go ahead and watch. For example, I would say that the intro to the VPN version 2.0 course is not that critical. And the IPsec remote access VPNs, that's about the legacy IPsec client. And what I've discovered is there are a lot of people in the world still using the old IPsec VPN client. So you're welcome to watch that video. If you are supporting or working with the legacy VPN client, that'd be a great video. But as far as the new CCNP security, the old client is no longer relevant. These 2 videos were previously assigned as was the ASA VPN options. So the digital certificates with the old legacy IPsec client, you don't need to watch that one either. However, again, if you're supporting it in a production environment, you definitely want to be familiar with digital certificates with that legacy IPsec VPN client. I've already assigned the site-to-site IPsec VPNs. So continuing on with the videos that I'm now assigning, we have AAA authentication, troubleshooting SSL VPNs, troubleshooting AnyConnect, the troubleshooting IPsec clients we don't need to go through. Again, that's the legacy IPsec VPN client. Again, unless it applies to work that you're currently doing, it's a very good resource to have if you're working with it. I've previously assigned troubleshooting IPsec site-to-site VPNs. We have Cisco Secure Desktop, which is the CSD and the Dynamic Access Policy, high availability VPNs, and VPN pieces and parts. And the ASA support in GNS3 is a great video to watch if you want to take a look at emulating the ASA for practice purposes in a GNS3 environment. There's also an entire GNS3 course here at CBT Nuggets, which addresses both the iOS and the ASA being emulated inside of a GNS3 environment. Your action item, my friend, are these videos next. And again, they're all located in the CCNP Security VPN version 2.0 course. And all of these videos from the CCNP Security VPN 2.0 course apply directly to the new CCNP Security, and specifically the course called Implementing Cisco Secure Mobility Solutions, which is the 300-209 that we're currently in. And I'd like to share with you some things that were not covered in the VPN 2.0 course, including some cool features for the AnyConnect client. For example, what if we do want to use IPsec as our primary protocol from the AnyConnect client? How do we make that happen? And that will be in our next video as we return back to the 300-209 course, the one that we're currently in. And that video will be titled AnyConnect IKE V2. And the great news is this: I get to go through with you on each of these videos. So I'm still with you, my friend, every step of the way. So I'll see you in the next video of VPN Profiles and Policies, which is located in the CCNP Security VPN version 2.0 course. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.